All right, just to let you guys know a little bit about me, Christian Sullivan. I'm a software engineer at Zogix. We're based out of Newport Beach. Probably never heard of us because we're not really well advertised. We do a lot of pro athlete stuff. We deal with professional athletes, kind of branding them, doing different types of applications for them. We're actually doing an application right now for a training facility for Major League Baseball. So a little bit about me. I have been told I'm a genius. My boss thinks so. So she's also called me an idiot a few times and then realized what it meant. It's my family. It's why I code, why I try to make money, why I try to turn into Instagram, but almost there. Not quite yet. But I use Instagram, as you can tell. How many of you guys here have used Titanium before? One. Awesome. I'm going to sound so smart now. Well, just to let you guys know a little bit about Titanium. What it is you can prototype and write iPhone applications, Android, BlackBerry, Windows Phone 7, but not really, all in JavaScript. And the big thing about it is you can write them and you're not using web views. So it's really nice. You actually get native implementation, native features, like native speeds pretty much. Rapid development, rapid prototyping. We've had clients come in, sit there and kind of brainstorm on us and say, hey, I'd really like an app that looked like this and kind of did this. And within 15 minutes of sitting there talking to them, we can bang out a quick prototype wireframe, be like, oh, like this, and start clicking buttons, doing view transitions, and they're just kind of amazed in front of us. It's all in JavaScript, multiple deployments, so you can actually write an app, deploy to many platforms. In theory, it's really easy. In actuality, it's not. There's always little caveats here and there where, Android, it doesn't line up quite properly, so you have to just write a little bit of different code for it. Certain features aren't available on Android and iPhones, like a navigation view. You have to kind of write your own little shim to fit that for Android. Titanium actually just released their new SDK, which also outputs to mobile web. So in one build, you can get an iPhone app, an Android app, and a mobile web app. And if you guys are doing client-based things, it's great because when your client asks for an iPhone app, then you sit on it, give them that, and they ask for an Android app, sit on it for a month, hand it to them a month later. And so, it took a lot of hard work, but we coded this, and it works. So, a lot of JS libraries work right out of the box, so you can go to Node and view all the great things in NPM, and then toss it into Titanium. There's little things here and there that don't match up sometimes. Like originally, to do logging, it was ti.ui or ti.api.info. Luckily, they switched to console log, so that made things a lot better. Titanium also has the ability to be extended using native modules. So say there's a piece that they don't have in the frameworks, you can easily write it in Java for Android or Objective-C for iPhone. But for the most part, the typical stuff you use day to day is all implemented in there. Titanium apps are native in the sense that you're running a straight Objective-C code. It's not like RubyMotion, though, where you actually write code that compiles into Objective-C. It's more of a pointer. So it's similar to Node.js. How many people have used Node? Okay, a little bit better. So it's similar to Node where you're writing things and they're calling native Objective-C. Difference is it doesn't use V8. It uses JavaScript core, which isn't as fun as V8. So there we go, all this one. You can expect a native user experience with, I like to say it runs at 75% speed because there's also that 25% of the Objective-C modules that are already coded for you. Certain things like table views, if you try to load a table view with 1,000 things, it doesn't load very fast. So you have to do lazy loading and a lot of things like that. But for the most part, you can do things pretty damn fast and get a great experience from them. This is just kind of a basic overview. I took this from one of their slides and showed it to a few people, and they're like, what the hell does that mean? But same thing, you get native UI views, you're using JavaScript. There's web views available also, so if there's a piece of your code, like in the Facebook app where you got the web view in the inside, you can toss that right in the middle. You can leverage back and forth between native code and web views. The platform features are great. I mean, you have multimedia, you can do video playing, video editing. They have analytics built in. Their analytics platform kind of sucks though, and you have to pay extra for it. Titanium Plus modules. People are coding stuff all day on GitHub and just tossing it on there for you to download. Location-based services, social sharing, data stuff. They have a SQLite integrated into it for persistence on the device. Not a huge fan of SQL. How many people like SQL here? I'm sorry, guys. And you're using Macs. Wait a minute. Who uses Titanium? You've probably used a Titanium app and didn't even realize it. Late Night Jimmy Fallon used it, Sugar Mobile, GetGlue. GetGlue is pretty huge in the App Store. NBC. A lot of these companies have actually gone to Appcelerator too and asked them to kind of build these apps for them since they're the pros at their own platform. And they've built a lot of these great things. For web developers, if you're used to the window or pages, then Windows pretty much the same thing. You create a window. Your window is your main view. Then in that window, you can start tossing in labels, text fields. Colors for things are similar to web, where you can use the hash and numbers and all that. Images, background images, same thing. You can link directly to a folder. The UI namespace provides most of your things, like your buttons, all your UI stuff. View hierarchy. A lot of stuff is boring. It's just kind of position and layout. I figured I'd go over the overview of that stuff, but it's not as fun. They have event handling, so a lot of the views you can do, if you're familiar with Objective-C, your window has loaded and all those kind of things you can do in JavaScript as well. When your window opens, you can have an open on-click event, or you can have on-click events, you can have open events firing and all that stuff, so if you need to catch those. Titanium workflow, it's pretty good. I mean, you run it on an iOS emulator, and you can recompile in seconds. If you're running on Android, you better keep it open, or else you're going to be waiting 20 minutes every time you want to test it. But they have the new Android emulator that runs native, so that one's a lot faster. A lot of times when I'm trying to write libraries and things for Titanium, I'll actually write them in Node, use them in Node, test them in Node, and then put them on Titanium with a little bit of porting I have to do. UI stuff, can't do that though, you have to do it all on the device. One of the libraries I wrote, my biggest thing was I'd get these PSDs from designers, and it was great to get a nice PSD. I mean, UI looks beautiful in this PSD, and the customer wants it to look just like that. Well, in order to do that, you have to slice an image, then you have to make sure the image is positioned perfectly on the page, and then, compile. Oh, damn, 10 pixels too low. Okay, let me move it up 10. Compile, go back, it's 2 pixels too high. Okay, down. So the good thing I did is I created this little thing using PSD.js that actually, you have a PSD file, you drop it on a drop zone, and then it outputs. So here's my PSD. I want this to look like exactly like this without having to sit there and play with pixels all day. So I drop it in my drop zone, and drop zone would be an HTML5 page, or a little drop zone where you drop a file, parses it, outputs my code, outputs all my images already sliced up for me and ready, so my UI is done. I don't have to sit there and go back and forth and check all of the things. This isn't perfect. It's perfect for me because it saves me a bunch of time, and all the little caveats of having to code extra things doesn't matter to me because I wrote it, so I'm like, this is awesome, I'm a genius. In all actuality, other people look at it and they're like, well, what about this? You should have implemented this feature. You should have implemented that. I'm like, this saves me like 6 hours, so it's cool to me. But I actually will be open sourcing this very soon. Again, I thought it looked really cool, but it doesn't do everything that everybody else would like. So before I put it on GitHub and have everybody give me 10,000 tickets, I figured I'd implement the things that are needed. But I mean, for the most part, the way it's used is you have a layer, you have your layer name, you put a hash symbol, and then whatever type of output you want it to be. So say you have a layer that you want to be a button, hash button. You want a view, hash view. So the great thing is you can just output all of these things and get your code. I don't know if can you guys all see the code kind of? So this one I cheated and I just made all views, but it does the basic thing. And it automatically allocates all your images and everything so you get exactly what you need. One of the things about Titanium that's kind of sucks most of the time is you can't extend Titanium objects because they're actually proxy objects to native objects. So say you create this cool interface that you want to reuse again, well, you have to just copy and paste the code. So what I did is I created a wrapper around the proxy objects to allow me to extend them in a native way, or not native way, native JavaScript way. And I also added Event Emitter 2. How many people have used Event Emitter 2 before? Node.js? No one. One person. What Event Emitter 2 is it allows you to have normal events, but you can also have You can have catch-all events. You can do namespaced events. So it's kind of nice because you can do some more tweaking with mobile apps. Sometimes those are things you want to do. You want to catch a lot of events. Also, I noticed with using the built-in event handlers in Titanium, they actually go, what they say, cross the bridge. So they cross the bridge to native land, then they have to come back, and there is a cost at that. So keeping everything in JavaScript does allow you to kind of speed things up a little bit. And by adding event emitters, it also helps out with the UI library too. It also has property mapping. Property mapping is say you have a label, you have text fields, and you have just an image area. And each one of these things you want to grab a value from. Well, they're not all named value, the piece you want to grab. One of them is called value, one of them is called title, one of them is called text. So what you can do is you can actually map certain fields to certain names. So you could say every single one of these, text is actually referred to as value. Image is referred to as value. So it allows you to do some pretty cool things. It's chainable too, so you can do like jQuery and chain everything. You can have a 50-foot long string if you wanted with all the different things you're doing. So normal Titanium syntax, create your window, TIUI.create window, do the normal things. The shimmy syntax is this one. It just shows kind of, it's a little trimmed down, so it's nice. You don't have to do TI.UI for everything. The also nice thing too is you can extend this object and you can make it, say you want your window to have basic defaults, you want to set height and width. By default, you don't want to have to enter it every time. You can add those kind of things. You can also do cooler things with your mapping. So like I said, you can have background shortened to BG. I mean, kind of trivial things, but you can also do more advanced things. Works great for complex forms. I've had to do forms. I mean, how many of you had to create forms for 10 different pages and they all were a little bit different? And you had to sit there and code it again and again and again. You're like, this shit sucks, man. So I created an app that one of our clients wanted that had about 50 forms in it and good old tabs. Everything had to be a tab. So what I did, create a little, using the shimmy library, create a form generator. At the time I created this, thought I was a genius again. I was like, this is great, works awesome. Well, then I found when I pre-populated with data, it didn't work so well, loaded really slow. So what I did in turn is I took this, I let it generate my code, copied and pasted my code, threw it in there. Since the forms were they didn't need to be dynamically generated every time, the cool thing was you could use this to generate the form, take that form code, and then put it in there. Because in Titanium, if you don't need to be dynamic with some things, it's kind of nice not to just to keep them static, because then it kind of increases your load time. You're not doing all the processing of things that you know are going to be the same every time. Let's see what else. So another thing I created is MongoDB. Why the name? I'm not very creative when it comes to naming stuff sometimes. I figured Mongo sounds like Mongo, so everybody be like, oh, I know what that is. What MongoDB is it's abstracted from, have any of you used Meteor yet? Meteor is kind of like a client server frameworks. It's a cool idea. It's got way too much in it. It's like a really, no, I don't want to use anything vulgar, but it's like a really pretty fat girl that you're just like, wow, you're beautiful, but that's a lot. Or if there's girls here, fat guy, same thing. So, I don't discriminate. So, but what it is essentially it's MongoDB on the iPhone. So I didn't like SQLite. I didn't like doing queries. My business partner is an accountant. He wrote his whole accounting system in MySQL, and he wrote about sprocs that are about 30 pages long each, and thought it was the greatest thing ever. So that made me hate SQL even more. So what I did is I abstracted from Meteor. They had a library called Mongo Mini embedded in there, which is really cool. It's a MongoDB that was persistent on the client side, and I thought it was a great idea. So what I did is I ported it to Titanium, and then I added file persistence. So what you can do is you can actually do all the native things you can do, all the similar things you can do in Mongo with inserts and queries and all that kind of stuff, but also persist to the file system. And then when you want to restart your app or whatever, it just grabs the file, parses it, and then puts it into memory. So the file is essentially just a big JSON string. So it's nice. And then again, I love eventing, so I added eventing to it. So when you do inserts and things like that, you can set off events and different things. The other reason why I was really big on offline, at our company we like to build everything for offline, and then we build it to be connected to the web. Because the big thing, if any of you have developed iPhone apps, service is never good for some reason. Your app is amazing and it works great with the server, but that one time you let your client test it, they can't get a signal. And they can't maintain a signal either. So your app is amazing, it's perfectly built, it's the best thing ever. They test it and they're like, why doesn't this work? Why is this taking so long? So the great thing about having your database on your device is you can make everything look zero latency. So what you do is use your local Mongo, do all your transversing inserts and all that kind of stuff, and in the background you can be inserting into the remote database and having all that done. So it's nice, so you can kind of hide the latency. One usage example right here, creating a basic collection, inserting. I think I put my insert before my, I have my find before my insert, so just pretend I inserted above that. So what you can do is, find a record, fetch. When you do a find, it actually returns a pointer to a record. So it's the same thing as Mongo, where you have to actually do the fetch or do the get all or the for each to kind of transverse them. Same thing, you can update one, updated set important to true for that value. Simple. How many people have used Mongo before? Okay, so most of you guys know what I'm talking about. Sorry, SQL guys again. Why did I do it? Again, offline. I was bored, wanted to code something. Need something to talk about here. And so you can avoid loading. My business partner, again, thinks everything in code is easy, thinks it should all take 2 seconds. Well, if I want to add a button, I want that button to click, and I want it to add to a server, it should be fast. I can think of it fast, you should be able to code it fast. So that's why I did this, because every time we have a loading screen, it drives him nuts. And he looks at it and he's like, why does it take so long? Well, because this has to hit the server, download data, come back, parse the data, and do something with it. So by doing this, kind of got rid of that and made our clients think that everything's super fast, and that one server that we're using is really 10 clustered ones. Another thing I like to use is TestFlight. Anybody here used TestFlight before? Well, what TestFlight is it makes the process of building a beta and deploying it to people to test for you super simple. I mean, you can take the app, create it, you upload it, and what it does, it sends it out to all your users, sends them an email saying, hey, this beta is available, you can install it now. Click install, and it installs it to your phone. You actually don't have to be in the App Store yet to use it. You do have to have all of your UDIDs on your developer's account. But it's great because for clients, clients think it's the coolest thing ever. They open up this email, click install, and all of a sudden the app's on their phone and they can test it. They also do have kind of an error tracking thing too built into it, so you can actually see how many failures you have, how many sessions you have, so you can kind of see what's going on in the background. And somebody's running, iOS 3.1, you can see it failed, and when they tell you, it won't run, well, you're running an archaic version, no wonder. Another thing I like to use actually just came out, Countly. Has anybody seen Countly yet? If you haven't seen Countly and you write mobile devices or you write mobile apps, check it out. It's an open source analytics tracking software, which is pretty great. The fact that they made it open source, it's pretty awesome. You can track kind of all the basics of a mobile app, sessions, users. You can check screen resolutions, whatever services they're using, whatever platform they're on. So it's really nice to kind of gauge and also help you when your app's in production to say, okay, we're having a big issue with our complaints that, people are saying the resolution sucks on the app. Well, you can see most people are using Retina, so you can kind of build and accommodate for that. Or you can see most people are using AT&T, and you need to use that MongoDB in the back end because they can't keep service. Questions? I have actually a code demo too, because everybody's writing code demos, and I didn't want to be the jackass who's just like, here's a presentation, enjoy. So if you guys want to ask questions after, you can ask questions. My information. Okay, let's go to our code demo. Anybody use Sublime Text 2 here? Anybody use TextMate? You should convert. So much better. All right, so here's I did this using my Shimmy library, but for the most part, anywhere you see UI dot, it would just be ti.ui. So basic to-do app, everybody does them. So I have on here, I use MongoDB, so what I'm doing is I'm using that just kind of for persistence, just to show me using it. I have my basic label right here, so it's just a label on top just saying what it is, a button, button allows me to add. So same thing, UI button, title add. Everything in Titanium is set absolute unless you use horizontal layouts and all that. But for the most part, those horizontal layouts kind of slow you down because it actually will render fully, see where everything is, and then it will lay it out. But everything's pretty much set absolute. So same thing, you have a text field here. I set the background color to it, top, left, right, height. If you set everything but the height and width, but you set top, left, bottom, and right, it will automatically kind of fit to the position. I have my table, so to create a table view, how many people here have coded native iOS apps? So you guys know the pain of creating a table, setting the data source, setting the table row cells. Well, in this, way easy. But again, if you're doing thousands of table rows at once, you do have to kind of lazy load and accommodate for that. Now say I want to add all of these things I've created to my window, just window.add, create an array, add all those to the array. Where you see on proxy, normally that would be button.add event listener, but on proxy is my shortcut to the proxy object using Shimmy. So Shimmy creates the wrapper around it, and when I want to use the native events, I actually use on proxy to connect to those. I was going to make it so that it's .on and whatever it is, but if you want to add your own specific click events, I figured I should keep the proxy object and your stuff separate, so I kind of did that. Now what this does right here, table.append row, appends a row. So, and in Titanium, whenever you add a row, if you create a field named title, it will automatically enter that text for the row. You can do more complex row objects by creating a view and then adding that view to a row. So you can do, I mean, whatever you want in a complexity of rows. To do insert, so that's just inserting whatever the value I created into my MongoDB, just so I have persistence. To do commit, what that does is it actually takes that JSON object I have, then stores it to the file, so it does a save. Console.log output, so you guys can see what the object is. Textfield.blur, what that does is it says that it wants it to lose focus from that text field, so anything I'm entering the text field, and people who have done native know that when you're done with something and you want to hide that keyboard, you actually have to get away from the text area, so by doing blur, it actually hides the keyboards, unsets the focus. And then textfield.value equals an empty string, just clearing out the text field. I threw an open listener right here. So what it is once it knows the window is open, kind of like on body ready, it fetches the data from the database and then populates the list for the to-do list. Window.open opens up the window. And then down here, I just kind of did a little extra stuff just to clear out all the information if we test it multiple times. So what I'm actually using is there's a project called MakeTI, and all it is just a makefile that allows you to use. Titanium has Python build files, or it does all its building with Python files. So what this does just kind of connects to the Python API and does all your building. They have an IDE. I'm not a big fan of IDEs. It takes like 5 minutes for the IDE to load. It's good for debugging, kind of, but for the most part, I mean, when it takes longer for my IDE to load than it does for me to write the code, it kind of sucks. But yeah, the makefile, it's available on GitHub as well. It just kind of does the basics. So by using that, though, it allows me to kind of cheat. And with Sublime Text, I can just Command B and then click on iPhone and it builds my project. So all that code you've seen generates this. Most beautiful app you've ever seen. So simple to-do list. I mean, you can type in, click on add, adds it to the to-do list. So now created a thing and, I exit out my app. I'm all done. And let's close it out here. Now in theory, when I'm done, I go back and open it up. Since the memory's been cleared, it should open because it persisted to that file. So we have it still there. So super exciting, I know. Try to hold yourself back, but but the cool thing is those of you who have developed native or those of you who haven't, the great thing about this is, JavaScript, you can make native apps. So one of my first jobs, I knew JavaScript, and they're like, do you know Objective-C? And I was like, of course I do. Did I know Objective-C? No, I didn't. Did I think I could learn it in a day? Yes, I did. Was I wrong? Completely. So luckily, I'd been using Titanium though, and I knew that, so I kind of did this real quick, got this out, and started building an app for them. And immediately I had this whole nother skill set of building native apps. That was great. And I mean, as you can see, you can go to appcelerator.com and look at the documentation. Documentation is a little spotty. I mean, the documentation is great, I will say now, compared to before. It really gives you details, but if you don't know for certain things you need, it's always great to look on GitHub at their actual source code. If you don't know Objective-C, it's still pretty easy to kind of go through it and say, oh, there's this feature that's not documented. So I'll do one more just to, you can see it adds it here. There we go. And then clears them out. Like I said, super basic. You can see right here I'm logging. This is actually what MongoDB is doing. It's storing it, same idea as MongoDB, it's giving it ID. These are actually the MongoDB object IDs that I'm using right here. I used it from one of the Node.js ORMs they have. I actually pulled out the JavaScript from there and used that. Like I said, I was using Event Emitter 2, which this code right here is actually straight from Node.js, no porting needed, just works. And you can use other libraries like underscore and all that kind of stuff, and they just work in here, and it's really great. Beyond that, I mean, that's pretty much it. If you guys got any questions.
Can you build for Android?
I can build for Android. I will try. I personally never build Android apps unless I have to, because it takes forever. And I'm one of those people that, I don't know if you guys don't like it when you open up an Android app and it looks like an iPhone app. I'm one of those guys who builds them like that. I'm like, yeah, well, I like the iPhone UI. I already made it look like an iPhone app, so let's just build it like that. All right, so Android wants me to create another thing. I'll open up, this is actually Titanium Studio. This is Titanium's IDE that they created to code these apps, which you can still do in a simple text editor. But as you can see, it's loading. In Titanium Studio, if you're not connected to the internet, you can't use it because it can't log in. So we'll do import project. Existing Titanium project. This is just built on top of Aptana. They actually bought out Aptana, if anybody views that. All right, desktop. Test already exists. Awesome. Test 2. All right, so that's imported. Now, Titanium, their tiapp.xml is the file that kind of holds all of the build information on what version of the SDK you're using, what devices you have available. It's not going to build on Android right now because I don't have the Android SDK on this computer. I have it on my other one. But if you want to build it on Android and you need a hand, give me a call. They actually have a cloud services platform that they just deployed to that allows you, if any of you use like Parse, you can actually have a native backend, or you can have a backend system just by using their API. It's pretty cool. I used it. Then I got to the point where I needed to allow another user to edit a record that somebody else saved. Can't do that. There's no admin user, so you can't edit anything that anybody else saved, so I quickly left that. I can deploy to iPad, and they have mobile web as well. So sorry, can't do Android right now. Any other questions?
Do you do the syncing in Monzo already, like in the background?
I have been working on the syncing. The only thing I'm having issues right now with is the object ID. So I'm trying to find a way. I mean, right now what I do is I have the object ID stored as You know, I have the remote as RID, and then I have the local as LID. But I'm trying to do it kind of more seamless way. So that's one thing I'm working on. So if you want to fork the code and do that, please do. And that's why I do open source for the most part, not because I'm that nice, but it's because I'm that lazy and I need help. Question?
I noticed you have the nodes requires. Is that
Yeah, good question. Titanium actually uses CommonJS for their requiring. It's kind of well built using it, but there's certain things like I love the app or the JSON file for Node. Titanium doesn't have that, so they use the same kind of thing. Same thing with and you have to directly require everything. You can't put it in like a Node modules folder and then just require it like openly. You actually have to do the absolute path for everything. So yeah, but they do use CommonJS, and it's really nice for sandboxing and all that kind of stuff. Any other questions?
You're saying that performance was about 75%. Is there any area specifically that it's a lot worse aside from just specific things that?
With performance, I say 75% because you're pretty much using somebody else's Objective-C and somebody else's Java code. So it can run at 100%. I could be wrong benchmarking-wise. The biggest thing I notice with slow things is when you try to build just a massive UI and you try to have the whole UI ready for the user right away, and you're populating data as well and doing dynamic things, it doesn't seem to load very fast. So a great thing about using the CommonJS is you can actually create your view in CommonJS or in your module, and then once the view is actually cached, then load the data into it. And I mean, with loading data into it is similar to the referencing is really easy actually. So say I want to change any of these fields, you literally would just do button.top, button.title, and you can just change anything you wanted. So pre-populating data, you know, once you load it, you can actually just, you know, send a JSON file or a JSON array to it and then load it all in. But I definitely would say build your views and then populate them. Don't try to populate them newly every time. I did that and nothing would load really fast. Any other questions? Cool. Well, thanks, guys. Thanks for listening.